Welcome to Best of the NES, a countdown of the top 25 best games on Nintendo's 8-bit home console. But this isn't a list of my personal favourites. A crack team of boffins have aggregated every top NES game list they could find, and have come up with a definitive list of games worth checking out. And I'm going to play them all. I'm FryGuy64, and this is Best of the NES. Our journey through the NES library begins at number 25. Today we're checking out Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. The Legend of Zelda landed on the NES in 1986 and was an instant smash hit thanks to its huge open world, sword-slashing action and brain-melting puzzles. I don't want to talk about it too much because I have a sneaking suspicion that it might show up in the top 25. Zelda II: The Adventure of Link arrived barely 1 year later, and once again, it was a success. The world was even bigger, the sword-slashing action more thrilling, and the mysteries more mysterious. Of course, if you were to ask people now, they'd argue that Zelda II changed too much of what had made the original game popular, making it the worst Zelda game ever. Your objective is to wake up Princess Zelda, but not the one you rescued in the last game, at least I don't think so. But an ancient incarnation who was placed under a sleeping spell generations ago. The only thing powerful enough to break the spell is the Triforce. 3 golden triangles that imbue great power on whoever holds them. We already picked up the Triforces of Wisdom and Power in the first game, but the Triforce of Courage has been sealed away in the Great Palace of North Hyrule. The magical barrier that protects the Great Palace can only be broken by placing a crystal in 6 statues, and each statue is located in one of the palaces of North Hyrule, protected by what else? Puzzles and monsters. Even though you killed Ganon in the previous game, his monsters still roam the land, hunting our hero. Only the blood of Link can revive their fallen leader. This truly is Link's most adventuresome quest yet. Adventuresome? What? You begin in the North Palace, standing next to the sleeping Zelda. And in case you haven't spotted the first controversial change to the Zelda formula already, let me give you a little hint. It's a side-scrolling platformer! While the overworld is presented as a large top-down map, if you enter a cave, palace, town, or anything that isn't the map, the view switches to a side-scrolling action scene. Link is equipped with a sword and shield, allowing him to attack enemies from several angles. When you're not swinging the sword, the shield will defend you against sword strikes and most projectiles. Oh, and you can perform a jump attack, because Link can jump in this one. Across the top of the screen, Link has a health bar and a magic bar. Take a hit from an enemy, your health goes down, cast a magic spell, your magic goes down. In the towns of Hyrule, you can talk to the locals for hints and replenish your health and magic at any time. The towns also share names with the sages from Ocarina of Time. And Mido. Ew, why though? Each town has a wise man who will teach you a spell, but you will usually need to complete a side quest before they meet with you. Spells are this game's equivalent to equipment. You can only use them in the action scenes and they temporarily improve Link's abilities, such as allowing him to bound cliffs in a single leap, blast armoured enemies with scorching fire, or turn into a fairy. You'll also notice that there are no life drops, no small hearts, no stray fairies, nothing. Instead, you learn the life spell relatively early on, allowing you to replenish a chunk of your health so long as you have enough magic bar remaining. So when you're in the middle of a long stretch of enemies, it's important to track down magic jars. Blue ones refill a single segment of your magic bar, while red ones fill it all the way. Enemies might drop them, but it's a good policy to stab every statue and stone head you see, just in case a magic jar is hidden there. Although sometimes, Iron Knuckle! Hidden away on the overworld map are heart containers and magic containers, which permanently extend your life bar and magic bar respectively. Some of these are really well hidden though, so don't feel bad if you need to consult a map. Also tucked away are Link dolls. Who even makes these? And they reward you with an extra life. That's right, Link also has lives now! If you lose a life, you will return to the screen you died on, lose all of your lives, and it's game over. You not only lose any unused experience points, but you also get taken back to the North Palace, and must trek across the overworld back to where you were. As you gather items, you can take shortcuts to speed this up, but it's a real pain in the bum. Wait, back up. Did you say experience points? Yep, another big change to the Zelda formula is the experience system. Defeating enemies, or stabbing P-bags, rewards Link with a handful of experience points. Once you've earned enough, you can level up one of Link's abilities. Attack increases the amount of damage Link deals to enemies, magic decreases the amount of magic needed for your spells, and life improves Link's vitality, so he takes less damage. If you're already familiar with the later games in the series, Zelda 2 is starting to look like the weird experimental one. But these changes don't feel gratuitous, change for the sake of change. Each one addresses a perceived limitation of the first game. Combat is a lot more strategic and involving. Enemies can vary their attacks, drop down on you from above, or swoop out of harm's way temporarily. In palaces, you can move from a wide open space to a claustrophobic hallway where an Iron Knuckle could be waiting to ambush you. Those damn Iron Knuckles. They can defend high or low and attack high or low, and you have to get in close to attack. The simplest strategy is to jump stab them in the head. Overcoming a difficult foe like the Iron Knuckle is very satisfying, and thanks to the experience system, they also reap greater rewards. The same is true of the bosses. Each one requires you to think about your limited combat ability in a slightly different way. It's just all a bit more strategic than nyeh. The side-on perspective means dungeons can take place on multiple floors for the first time, travelling between them on these little lifts. By crossing continents and helping townspeople, the game feels grand, a bigger adventure than what has come before. Most crucially of all, it doesn't lose the core of a Zelda game, stabbing monsters with a sword, solving tricky puzzles and completing side quests. And keys. Lots and lots of keys. With all that said, that's not to say that Zelda 2 doesn't have some problems. The thing that most puts people off is the difficulty. On the whole, the game isn't actually too hard. However, a handful of puzzle solutions are so cryptic as to be near unsolvable without a guide, and some of the combat areas are frustrating tests of endurance. Let's look at a non-optional puzzle. In the town of Saria, you need to cross the river to Death Mountain, but the river guard will only let townspeople cross the bridge. Nobody really tells you what to do next, but you need to speak to Bagu. But where's Bagu? Perhaps someone in town will give you a clue. Sure enough, speak to the sleeping purple bit 4 times and he will wake up and tell you that his master is in the woods north of the river. This isn't puzzle solving, this is being so vague the player has to exhaust every possibility. And even if you tried everything, it's way more likely you'll stumble on Bagu's cabin by accident before you try speaking to a sleeping blob 4 times in a row. When you finally reach Death Mountain, this too is an arduous journey, a maze of caves filled with tough enemies like the axe-throwing Daira. Even once you know the optimal path through here, getting to the end is a real slog. Is a challenge a bad thing though? In order to make it through, you have to get really good at combat, dodging projectiles and figuring out enemy patterns. You learn to ration your life spell and figure out the locations of the magic jars. Make it to the end and you're rewarded with a hammer, which smashes rocks in the overworld, and a magic container, which will be handy for the life spell. With the hammer in hand, you can now reach the next town, where you meet a swordsman who teaches you the down thrust sword technique. This allows you to jump and stab directly downwards. Now you can easily bypass most enemies and avoid tons of damage. Just boop and run away! So this is why I think Death Mountain is a bad thing. All of those skills you learned in order to cross Death Mountain, patient combat, learning enemy patterns, preserving your life and magic, you don't need to worry about them anymore. Boop, and I'm out of here! One change that wasn't so well received is how Zelda 2 abandoned the open world exploration so prevalent in the first game. In Zelda 1 you were dropped in the middle of a massive world, or the bottom centre of it anyway, and you were free to wander off in any direction and see what you could find. You could enter dungeons out of sequence or skip some items entirely. Zelda 2 doesn't give you this freedom. The map is portioned out to you in small chunks, and you can't leave an area until you've pretty much cleared everything. There's also never any reason to go back to old areas. The items and spells you earn later in the game are never used for overworld exploration outside of the area you get them in. This makes the decision to return Link to the North Palace after a game over even more baffling. Imagine if you were returned to the beginning, but now you had the opportunity to use your new equipment to explore areas that were out of reach to you before. You know, like in every other Zelda game, even the really linear ones. That would be really cool. Neither of these problems break the game or make it awful. If you can push through the Death Mountain area, the game really opens up and becomes a lot more enjoyable. Dare I say, a lot more Zelda-y. After you travel to the second continent, a lot of the enemies are resistant to your sword, so you'll need to learn the fire spell. This is a really great place to grind for levels. You get generous experience from these Tektites and they regularly drop magic jars to top up after using the fire spell a bunch. In general, I'm not a fan of grinding as a gameplay mechanic, But if it can't be eliminated entirely, the best thing is to make it go by as fast as possible, and that's how I feel about it here. It's convenient and pretty speedy. Once you cross the mountains to the north, you'll find the town of Darunia. Monsters kidnapped a child from the town and you need to stage a rescue. You see, the boss of the next palace, Karok, can only be defeated with the Reflect spell. You learn the Reflect spell in Darunia, over here. Before you can learn it, you must rescue the child, from over here. Then return the child to Darunia, over here. Then head back to the palace over— oh my word. At least when you rescue the child... I love this so much. How often do you see a game of this era using its internal logic for a visual gag? Alright, you little rapscallion, let's get you home. So you pick up the magic boots that let you walk on water so you can cross to the palace in the sea, pick up the flute and defeat the giant. Armed with the tootly power of the flute, vanquish the river demon to the south with your pleasing melodies of death. This is the final area, and the difficulty really steps up. Enemies become harder to predict, and some puzzles really stretch the definition of puzzle. Kasuto Town has been abandoned, and has been overrun by invisible monsters. The residents have established a new town, hidden somewhere to the east. Look everywhere and you'll never find them, because the only way to reveal the town is to use a feature of the hammer you've never needed to use and probably never needed to know about. Mass deforestation. I mean, what could this possibly look like from Link's perspective? Like everything in this area, the 6th palace is also hidden. The boss of the final palace is the lava dragon Barber. Stab it in the chin a bunch, then place the final crystal. To reach the Great Palace, you'll need to cross the Valley of Death. So it might be a good idea to max out all of your levels and make sure you've gathered any stray heart containers, magic containers and link dolls. And learn the Thunder spell from the wise man in the abandoned Kasuto Town. Trust me. In fact, you'll be so kitted out with awesome stuff, there's no way this can be a challenge, right? Well, rather than putting all your combat skills to the test, instead there's a load of flying enemies near instant death lava pits, so that's fun. The barrier around the Great Palace falls and Link heads inside to the final test of his courage. The Great Palace is a huge maze filled with hidden passages and new enemies. The most troublesome enemy is the, Fokker? I call them Hawkers. They're effectively jumping iron knuckles, and they deal a ton of damage. While you can try taking them on, it's usually a better plan to peg it, so long as you don't run into a brick wall. No! To navigate this maze, try everything on everything. There's a secret path hidden under one of these blocks that you have to take. That's just mean. The final battle is against the Thunderbird, notable for spitting fire and not being a bird. In fact, you have to use the Thunder spell to make it vulnerable. If you came here without the spell, like I did the first time I played the game, then you simply can't beat it. Avoid its fireballs and stab it in its creepy skull face a bunch and the Thunderbird will fall. Link makes his way to the Chamber of the Triforce, but this squat gnome forces Link to fight his own shadow. This is a cool fight. Dark Link is aggressive and tough to defeat. If you're still weak from the Thunderbird fight, crouch in the corner and stab it in the ankles for a quick victory. With the 3 golden triangles of the Triforce reunited, Princess Zelda awakens from her slumber. As the curtain drops, she moves in for a kiss. Whoa lady, this is moving a little fast. Thanks a million? Oh no, thank you. So that's Zelda II, The Adventure of Link. Would I put it in my own top 25? You know what? I think I would. I didn't play this game as a kid, and its bad reputation really did put me off. When I finally beat it, I was pleasantly surprised. Even though it has a lot of differences, it still feels like a Zelda game, with clever dungeons, involving combat, towns to visit and loads of side quests to complete. But as the Zelda series continued to evolve on more advanced hardware, Nintendo was able to capture the same scale and complexity without straying as far from the template set by the first game, making Zelda 2 look like a failed experiment. And it's far from perfect, with bizarre difficulty spikes and puzzles that amount to try everything on everything. So for someone returning to the game, having first experienced A Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time, it doesn't hold up so well with hindsight. But for a game series as critically acclaimed as The Legend of Zelda, it's possible to be at the bottom of the pile, almost, and still come out better than most other games. Thanks for watching the inaugural episode of Best of the NES. What are your memories of Zelda 2? Did you play it when it was new or did you come back to it later? Leave a comment below and let me know. If you liked this video, give it a little like there. If you really liked it and want to be notified when the next episode arrives, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon too. And if you really liked it, I have a Patreon. Any donations are gratefully received and will go towards making more and better videos. In the next episode of Best of the NES, we'll be forging elemental swords in a post-apocalyptic world. See you next time!